Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. As we conclude Matthew chapter 26, we see Peter actually falling into a sin that he thought he would never do. He ends up denying Jesus 3 times, and he had said at the Last Supper, he said, "I would never deny you, even if I have to die, I would not deny you." And yet we see him doing that here at the end of the chapter, and it says that he went out and cried bitterly. He was completely distraught that he would do this very thing that he thought he would never do. And as we think about our lives, there might be things that we think that we would never do, things that we think are completely out of the realm of possibility for us to do, sins that we think are too grievous for us to ever commit. And maybe we think the same thing as Peter did at the Last Supper. We think, Lord, I would never do that. Even if I have to die, I would never do that. And yet we have to be on guard if we find ourselves in that situation, because what we find here in the story of Peter is we find that there was a process involved that eventually culminated in him committing this grievous sin. And the first thing is, how it started out, where he basically said, "I would not ever deny you, no matter what." Pride played a big part in Peter's fall. Thinking that he could never deny Jesus caused him to put his guard down. And instead of being humble and being watchful and careful, he was prideful and boastful. And that set him up for failure. And it will for us as well. When we think about certain sins, we might think, I would never do that. There's no way in the world I would ever commit that particular sin. Well, we shouldn't be so prideful. We need to remember that the world is a place full of stumbling blocks, that the flesh is weak, that Satan is unrelenting in his pursuit of us, and therefore we should never think that something is beyond the realm of us committing. If so, again, we'll let our guard down and we leave ourselves open and susceptible to falling into that very sin. But then the other thing that happened was we see that he became sleepy and he became unwatchful. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was going away to pray, he left Peter, James, and John there, and they sleep. Several times he comes back and finds them asleep, and Jesus rebukes them, and he addresses Peter when he does so. He says, it says in verse 40, "And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, 'So you men could not watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.'" He says you should be watching and praying so that you will not enter into temptation because of the weakness of the flesh. Whenever we stop watching, whenever we stop praying, we leave ourselves open to being susceptible to these various sins, and the weakness of the flesh then begins to take over. And so because Peter wasn't watchful and because he wasn't praying, he fell into this sin. But also, as we get more closer to the actual time when Jesus is led astray, or actually after Jesus is led, not astray, but led away, we see that Peter was following Jesus from a distance. And of course, that became a reason why he eventually fell. It says in verse 58, it says, "But Peter was following him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and entered in and sat down with the officers to see the outcome." So he's become a spectator in the distance, watching, and instead of being involved in what was to come and what was the outcome, he was just sitting back to see what the outcome was. So he starts following Jesus at a distance. He becomes a spectator. Instead of taking up his cross and following Jesus, he stops and just begins to watch. And whenever we distance ourselves from Jesus, we too open ourselves to fall into sin. It's only when we are close to Jesus, when we're abiding in Jesus, when we're in close communion with Jesus, in contact with him, in devotion to him, that we set ourselves up for a position in which we can overcome temptation. But when we're far away from Jesus, when he's just someone perhaps that we think about once a week at church on Sunday morning, and then we pretty much just don't think about him anymore the rest of the week, and we just kind of distance ourselves from him. Maybe we want to avoid suffering and things like that, so we kind of just hang back and we just become a spectator in what Christ is doing. We open ourselves to do things that perhaps we never thought we would do before. And so that can be a danger. So these are ways that we might fall into sin, even into sins that we thought we would never do. When we become prideful, thinking that we would never do certain things. Whenever we become, drowsy spiritually, we're not watchful and praying. And then also when we're just following Jesus at a distance. All of these different things can set us up for failure. And it really opens the door for Satan to come in and tempt us and lead us into places we thought we would never go, and therefore cause a lot of sin and disruption in our lives. So let's take these words to heart. Let's be careful not to follow into the traps that Peter fell into. But let's be diligent, always following the Lord, always being watchful, always being prayerful, being humble before him. And not allowing ourselves to follow at a distance, but getting close to the Lord and drawing close to him each and every day. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.